Chapter 3076_Misty Canyon, Abyssal Star City. Misty Canyon, Abyssal Star City. As players could only purchase the teleportation scrolls for Abyssal Star City on the first day of the city's opening, the number of players in the city had fallen dramatically. The only combat players that remained in the city were the various first-rate powers and superpowers peak experts. These were the only combat players capable of grinding in the level 110 maps near the Misty Canyon, albeit just barely. Aside from combat players, the various powers merchant players also chose to remain in the city to complete the daily material collection quests and reputation quests the Azura Mercenary Alliance issued. They relied on these quests to accumulate the Mercenary Alliance's contribution points and try to become a bronze member as soon as possible. One could say that aside from Zero Wings and Witches Sins members, none of the players present in Abyssal Star City was an ordinary individual. Even so, Abyssal Star City's player population still exceeded 1 million. It was no exaggeration to say that Abyssal Star City was already the #1 city in the miniature ancient world. Can we really participate in this guild activity, Boss Blade? Stone, who was only a level 100 shield warrior, asked Rampant Blade after arriving at Zero Wings' residence using a guild transfer scroll. Currently, nearly 200 players were gathered in the courtyard of Zero Wings' residence. Aside from them, ex-members of Shadow, everyone else was either at level 103 or level 104. Moreover, most of these players looked like they were only 20 years old, and every one of them was either at the half-step refinement realm or refinement realm already. This situation was unnerving for the ex-members of Shadows. "I think so," Rampant Blade said hesitantly. He similarly felt stressed when he looked at the youngsters around him. In Shadow, a refinement realm would be regarded as one of the guild's top combatants without question. Even first-rate guilds would treat their refinement realm experts as mid-level mainstays. After all, in the average first-rate guild, there would only be several hundred refinement realm experts out of the several million members in the guild. However, despite being a refinement realm expert, Rampant Blade felt that he was nothing but an insignificant existence in the current Zero Wing. It was even worse for the other ex-members of Shadow. While Rampant Blade and the others were feeling stressed over their situation, a group of a dozen or so players walked out of the guild hall. Rampant Blade spotted two familiar faces among these players, Blackie and Su Qianliu. However, when Rampant Blade saw Blackie and Su Qianliu, he couldn't help but feel a sense of distance. Specifically, the massive distance in strength and levels between them. Currently, both Blackie and Su Qianliu had already reached an astonishing level of 107. Upon seeing their levels, Rampant Blade couldn't help but lose the will to live. It should be known that even the various superpowers peak experts were only at level 104, and they'd still need at least 2 days to reach level 105. Yet, Blackie and Su Qianliu had already surpassed those peak experts by 3 levels. What kind of leveling speed was this? Alright, since everyone's gathered, get ready to move out. Make sure not to fall behind. If you break away from the team, you'll have no choice but to wait until the next group training, Shifeng cautioned as he swept his gaze across the gathered crowd. After 2 days of research, Shifeng had already found the ideal grinding spot in the Burning Land. The monsters in that grinding spot consisted of only level 112 Blackstone Orcs. Moreover, their numbers were quite concentrated, and most of them were only at the High Lord rank, with some at the Great Lord rank. Any random group they lured there would also have at least 1,000 Blackstone Orcs. With the suppression of Shifeng's Mana Domain and Su Qianliu and Blackie's Tier 3 AoE spells, grinding these Blackstone Orcs would be quick and easy. Even without Shifeng's Mana Domain, Su Qianliu and Blackie could still handle the monsters by themselves since they had already reached level 107. The only problem was getting to the grinding spot. The journey there involved traveling through the Misty Canyon, which was infested with monsters around level 117. Even a high lord of this level could effortlessly slaughter level 104 refinement realm experts. Fortunately, Shifeng was Abyssal Star City's administrator, so he could assign some of the city's NPC guards to escort Zero Wings members out of the Misty Canyon. After Shifeng gave his command, Su Qianliu took charge of the team and followed the NPC guards to the Burning Land. During their journey across the Misty Canyon, Rampant Blade and the other ex-members of Shadow couldn't help but be shocked when they saw many of the team's members nearly getting insta-killed by the monsters that abruptly appeared from the sides. Rather than a grinding activity, it felt more like they were going on a perilous journey instead. After advancing for around 5 hours, the team finally arrived at the Blackstone tribe's campsite in the Burning Land. "I'll go and lure the monsters. You guys get ready to cast your spells," Shifeng said as he looked at Su Qianliu and Blackie. Then, after saying so, he promptly charged toward the nearest group of Blackstone orcs. When Rampant Blade and the others, who were grinding here for the first time, saw Shifeng's actions, they couldn't help but be stunned. Although most of the Blackstone orcs were only High Lords, they were level 112 monsters. For a level 108 player like Shifeng, these level 112 High Lords were even stronger than level 108 Great Lords. As for the level 112 Great Lords, they were essentially level 108 Grand Lords to Shifeng. Yet, despite going up against so many Blackstone orcs, Shifeng had charged at the monsters without hesitation. Even Apex experts would fall quickly if they pulled such a stunt. However, after Shifeng released his mana domain, the Blackstone orcs, who normally relied on mana to strengthen themselves, instantly lost over 1/3 of their combat power. Now that Shifeng's basic attributes were already at the Tier 4 standard, these Blackstone orcs had become nothing more than toddlers in front of him. In less than 5 minutes, Shifeng had successfully lured a group of over 1,000 Blackstone orcs to Su Qianliu and the others, taking no damage throughout the entire process. "Attack!" Shifeng shouted when he saw that the Blackstone orcs were less than 100 yards away from Su Qianliu and the others. "Fire!" Su Qianliu commanded. Immediately, Su Qianliu, Blackie, and several other magical class experts equipped with the Primordial Mana equipment set unleashed the Tier 3 AoE spells they had pre-cast, bombarding the Blackstone orcs with meteorites, ice, and wind. In the meantime, Shifeng leaped into the air and stayed suspended 100 meters above ground using his mana domain. Then, using his vantage point, he watched the bombardment of AoE spells. The AoE spells Su Qianliu and the others cast carried power at the Tier 4 standard. So, even the level 112 Great Lord ranked Blackstone orcs were beaten into a heavily injured state after getting hit by the spells, which, in turn, caused their combat power to plummet even further. All other ranged DPS attack as well, Shifeng commanded. Upon hearing Shifeng's command, Dawn Moon and the other ranged players promptly began launching their spells and skills as well. Due to the Blackstone orcs being in a heavily injured state, the effects of the level suppression had been weakened. Although Dawn Moon and the others were incapable of dealing damage in the millions like Su Qianliu and Blackie, their attacks still managed to cause over 100,000 damage. When they achieved a critical hit, some of their attacks even caused 200,000 or 300,000 damage. The Blackstone orcs only had around 60 million HP, so it didn't take long for them to be reduced into ashes. Meanwhile, after the Blackstone orcs died, everyone present saw their experience bars increasing by a huge chunk. In the case of Rampant Blade and the other ex-members of Zero Wing, who had their levels reduced to 100 by World Dominators, they saw their experience bars increasing by 20%. This situation thoroughly dumbfounded them. Since when did it become so easy to level up? Good. I'll go and lure another group. In the meantime, rest up and recover your mana, Shifeng said to the team before leaving to lure another group of Blackstone orcs. After Shifeng lured a few more groups of Blackstone orcs, Rampant Blade and the other ex-members of Shadow successfully reached level 101. Many of the level 103 members present had also risen to level 104, their current leveling speed vastly surpassing their past leveling speed. Meanwhile, outside the Candlelight Hotel in 100 Flow City, "Is Zero Wing really as amazing as you say it is?" Yaoyu, an otherworldly beauty wearing light grey armor, asked as she looked at the aged hotel before her, a trace of doubt in her eyes. When this beautiful woman stopped in front of the Candlelight Hotel, the players walking on the street, regardless of gender, couldn't help but stop to look at her. This was because this woman didn't simply possess otherworldly beauty. Even her presence felt otherworldly, and everyone couldn't help but get the urge to appreciate her beauty and presence. Zero Wing has managed to scare off even world dominators, Big Sis Snow. Moreover, You won't be subjected to any troublesome restrictions even if you join Zero Wing. In the off chance that you do get accepted, you might finally get to resolve the trouble that has been plaguing you all these years, Lin Yaoyu said. Okay. Let's go and take a look, Gentle Snow said, nodding. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3077_Burning Land, Blackstone Orcs Campsite. Burning Land, Blackstone Orcs Campsite. After grinding Blackstone Orcs for several hours, Zero Wings members saw an increase in their levels. It was especially true for Rampant Blade and the ex-members of Zero Wing. Despite being at level 100 just a few hours ago, they were now level 103. This was due to the significant EXP bonuses they received as a result of the difference in levels between them and the monsters. As for the other players in the team, although not as significant as the ex-Zero Wing members, all of them still leveled up once. Even Shifeng had leveled up once, reaching level 109. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Shifeng's power leveling rivaled the power leveling provided by Tier 4 experts on the main continent. While Shifeng was taking a break after just defeating another group of Blackstone Orcs, the sound of a message notification suddenly entered his ears. Lin Yaoyu is here? Shifeng smiled when he saw the contents of the message Blakeanna, the Candlelight Hotel's manager, sent him. Shifeng had granted Blakeanna a certain degree of authority over the Candlelight Hotel. In addition, so long as someone he listed as important visited the Candlelight Hotel, Blakeanna would message him and inform him immediately. Currently, there were only 3 people Shifeng had listed as important: Galaxy Past, Hidden Soul, and Lin Yaoyu. In Shifeng's eyes, Lin Yaoyu was a magical genius. While the average domain realm expert might not be able to notice this detail, Shifeng could sense it clearly. Lin Yaoyu possessed an incredibly high affinity with mana. Even though she was only Tier 3 right now, her perception toward mana was already nearing the Tier 5 standard. The odds of someone having such a talent were less than 0.1%. Had Lin Yaoyu joined a superpower instead of a first-rate guild like Mysterious Moon, she would have probably gained a mana domain already by now, and her combat power would surpass even Galaxy Past. Everyone is close to reaching their corrosion threshold already, guild leader Su Qianliu reminded Shifeng after looking at Rampant Blade and the others. Judging by their complexions, it was clear that they were no longer at peak mental performance. Compared to the maps located near NPC cities, the foreign energy present in the Burning Land was much denser. As a result, players' bodies also get corroded much more quickly. Meanwhile, in addition to putting players in a hungry and energy-deprived state, the corrosion of foreign energy would also drain a person's mental state. In addition, once a player's corrosion threshold reached a certain level, they would quickly die if they didn't return to a city to rest. The foreign energy present in God's Domain's level 100+ maps was also the main factor restricting a player's leveling speed. Due to the presence of this foreign energy, players could not grind for as long as they wanted. After factoring in travel and recovery times, even if there were 48 hours in a day in God's Domain, the average player could only spend around a dozen of those hours grinding and leveling up in a level 100+ map. The situation was even worse in the Burning Land. Even a player with a gold mana body could, at most, last around 13 or 14 hours here. As for those with bronze and silver mana bodies, they couldn't even last 10 hours here. Okay. Let's head back and rest, then, Shifeng said, nodding. The current leveling speed of Zero Wings members was already beyond everyone else in God's Domain. After all, Zero Wings members had Abyssal Star City's NPC guards escorting them to the border of the Burning Land. They had a huge advantage over the various superpowers teams that had to travel out of the Misty Canyon by themselves. Rampant Blade and the others sighed in relief when they heard Shifeng's words. At the same time, they couldn't help but be amazed by Shifeng, Su Qianliu, and the other executives of Zero Wing. While they were having trouble controlling their bodies due to their hunger and mental fatigue, Shifeng and the other executives of Zero Wing only looked a little tired. Shifeng, in particular, behaved no differently than usual, and he could still toy around with the Blackstone Orcs with little effort. Subsequently, Su Qianliu and the others took out a guild transfer scroll and teleported back to Zero Wing's residence in Abyssal Star City. As for Shifeng, he used a return scroll for 100 Flow City. We are hosted November 3L. Find us on G00GLE. 100 Flow City, Candlelight Hotel. The mana here sure is dense. It's much denser than the other hotels in 100 Flow City, Gentle Snow exclaimed while sitting in the Candlelight Hotel's reception room. I can even feel the foreign energy in my body getting purified much more quickly. It's no wonder even world dominators is fearful of Zero Wing. Increasing the mana density of an area was a challenging task in God's domain. Moreover, the higher the density, the greater the difficulty. The miniature ancient world originally possessed a rich mana environment already, and it was close to matching the various superpowers' holy lands on the main continent. Yet, the Candlelight Hotel had managed to further improve this already dense mana by a large margin, creating a mana environment that was superior to even that of the various superpowers' holy lands. On top of that, the Candlelight Hotel's environment could also accelerate the purification of foreign energy. Not even the various superpowers could produce such a mana environment in the current God's domain. Yet, Zero Wing had accomplished it. This is nothing, Big Sis Snow. Whether it is the mana density or the foreign energy purification rate here, both are only a fraction of what is available in Abyssal Star City, Lin Yaoyu said. Then, with a look of envy, she continued, currently, all of Zero Wing's members are operating from Abyssal Star City. Their development rate is significantly faster than players like us who can only operate around NPC cities. Every player in the miniature ancient world was looking to reach level 120 as soon as possible. It was so that they could enter the boundary mountain range and become the first to capitalize on the resources of two gods' domains. Meanwhile, Abyssal Star City was undoubtedly the easiest solution to achieve this goal. Because of this, Lin Yaoyu had come to join Zero Wing as an outer member. In addition, she had also persuaded Gentle Snow to join Zero Wing with her. Currently, there were only 2 guilds garrisoned in Abyssal Star City, and all members belonging to these 2 guilds could freely enter the city. Meanwhile, so long as the 2 of them became Zero Wing's outer members, they, too, could freely enter Abyssal Star City. Although Lin Yaoyu wouldn't be able to teleport into Abyssal Star City directly since she was still a member of Mysterious Moon, that wasn't a problem for Gentle Snow. Gentle Snow didn't have a guild, so she could join Zero Wing and purchase Zero Wing's guild transfer scrolls. While Lin Yaoyu and Gentle Snow were talking, the reception room's doors suddenly opened. Then, a cloaked young man walked into the room, and this person was none other than Shifeng. Gentle Snow? Shifeng was stunned when he saw the incredibly familiar woman sitting inside the reception room. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3078 Shifeng was incredibly familiar with Gentle Snow the Snow Goddess. Shifeng was incredibly familiar with Gentle Snow the Snow Goddess. She was one of Zero Wing's vice guild leaders during his previous life. She was also one of Zero Wing's earliest members to reach Tier 6. She had even reached the Beyond Domain realm in terms of combat standards. In short, she was one of Zero Wing's strongest combatant. Originally, Shifeng had thought of seeking out Gentle Snow in this timeline. However, Gentle Snow had long since disappeared from God's domain in this timeline. Nobody knew why she had disappeared from God's domain, either. Gentle Snow was publicly recognized as an expert with the potential to reach Tier 6 and create all sorts of legendary feats in God's domain. So, when she disappeared all of a sudden, many people found the situation a pity. Shifeng never thought he could meet Gentle Snow again in this life. Mr. Black Flame? Lin Yaoyu couldn't help but look at Shifeng oddly when she saw the stunned look on his face. It was true that Gentle Snow was as beautiful as a fairy. If she were to appear in public without hiding her appearance, she would mesmerize many people with her beauty. This was true for both men and women. However, the charm of her beauty was only limited to ordinary people. Lin Yaoyu did not believe that a Tier 6 God-ranked expert like Shifeng would be fascinated by Gentle Snow's beauty and temperament. There was simply no way that could happen. Lin Yaoyu was aware that Shifeng had previously met with the frost flame goddess Cleansed Rue, and she was in no way inferior to gentle snow when it came to beauty and temperament. Yet, not only did Shifeng not show any reaction to Cleansed Rue's beauty, but he had even caused 100 Flower Palace and Nature Hall to suffer a huge loss without hesitation. While this information was a secret to most people, Mysterious Moon just so happened to be one of the guilds that knew this secret. "Sorry for keeping you two waiting," Shifeng said, quickly recovering from his surprise. Then, he looked toward Gentle Snow and smiled as he explained, "I didn't expect you to bring the long-vanished snow goddess to me, Miss Lin. The various powers would probably be shocked if they learned of her return." When Lin Yaoyu heard Shifeng's words, realization dawned on her. The snow goddess's disappearance from God's domain had always remained a mystery. If those who knew about Gentle Snow learned that she had suddenly reappeared, they would most likely be surprised. "You flatter me, Guild Leader Black Flame. I am merely someone who has been eliminated by time," Gentle Snow calmly said. "You, on the other hand, are someone who has truly shocked the various powers of God's domain. Previously, the 5 great superguilds were probably the only powers in God's domain capable of making world dominators admit defeat. Now, though, one more had appeared. That's simply a decision world dominators reached after weighing its chances against the various superpowers," Shifeng said, shaking his head. He was well aware that the current Zero Wing lacked the strength to make world dominators admit defeat. Subsequently, Shifeng looked toward Lin Yaoyu and smiled, asking, "Since you came here, I believe you've decided to become an outer member of Zero Wing, right, Miss Lin?" "That's right. In addition, I wish to invite Big Sis Snow to become an outer member as well," Lin Yaoyu said, nodding. "Although Big Sis Snow hasn't played God's domain for many years already, I assure you that her combat standard has not deteriorated." In reality, Lin Yaoyu had been a little apprehensive in inviting Gentle Snow to join Zero Wing. Currently, Gentle Snow was only level 103 and geared in level 100 Dark Gold equipment. While she might be a Void Realm expert, it'd take her a lot of time and effort to catch up to the progress of the various superpowers experts with her lack of level and equipment. At the very least, Gentle Snow wouldn't be of any use to Zero Wing in the short term. Meanwhile, Zero Wing was currently overflowing with talents. As evidence, players seeking to join Zero Wing needed to be at the half-step Refinement Realm standard. Older players even needed to be at the Refinement Realm standard to have a chance at joining Zero Wing. Not to mention, Zero Wing could mass-produce the Primordial Mana equipment set. So long as a Refinement Realm expert donned that set, they would instantly gain strength nearing the Tier 4 standard. This was a standard that even most peak experts had difficulty achieving in the current miniature ancient world. "I know. I have a lot of faith in Miss Snow's strength," Shifeng said, chuckling when he saw the anxiety on Lin Yaoyu's face. "Also, I've already said that I won't force you to do anything even if you join Zero Wing. Our relationship is only a business transaction. You'll help Zero Wing complete quests, while Zero Wing will provide you with the resources necessary for your growth. What kind of quests you complete, what kind of resources you obtain, and how far you can grow depends on you. Of course, if you are willing to become an official member of the Zero Wing Alliance, you'll receive assistance far beyond what is available to outer members. In exchange, though, you'll have to shoulder a few more restrictions." "A few more restrictions?" Lin Yaoyu was tempted by Shifeng's words. "May I know what these restrictions are?" Currently, Gentle Snow did not possess any background or backing. She had to rely on herself for everything in God's domain. Although Lin Yaoyu held an executive position in Mysterious Moon and was regarded as a priority target for nurturing, the resources she could access were still very limited. At most, she could get a few pieces of epic weapons and equipment for Gentle Snow. However, such items simply weren't enough to help Gentle Snow achieve rapid growth. However, if Gentle Snow could receive Zero Wing's support, she might just be able to achieve a qualitative transformation. That way, she might get some relief from the problems plaguing her. Official members of the Zero Wing Alliance cannot refuse some of the more important quests and commissions. Of course, you will only be required to take on such quests and commissions 4 times a month. Moreover, these quests and commissions would typically award you with lucrative amounts of contribution points upon completion, Shifeng explained. Then, he shared a list of resources with Lin Yaoyu and Gentle Snow before saying, "Here is a list of items available for exchange in the Zero Wing Alliance. Official members will receive a 10% discount when exchanging for these items. Outer members will not receive such a benefit." When Lin Yaoyu and Gentle Snow finished browsing through the resource exchange list, they couldn't help but be shocked. Setting aside the saint-level mana technique, what the heck was this ancient god's blood? They had never heard of an item capable of upgrading a player's mana body before. Why did so many experts come to the miniature ancient world? The main reason was so that they could change their mana bodies. This novel is _hosted_ by hosted novel. The mana body was a crucial factor that decided a player's future tier. The reason so many experts were unable to reach Tier 4 and Tier 5 was mainly because the rank of their mana bodies was too low. However, the only way players could change their mana bodies on the main continent was by deleting their accounts and restarting their progress. Meanwhile, this was a decision that most people dared not do. After all, nobody could say for certain whether the opportunities they encountered in their new account would be better. It was especially so now that the various powers had long since monopolized most of the resources and opportunities available on the main continent. Playing a new account was a very risky endeavor in such a situation. However, it was a different story for the miniature ancient world. In addition to being free from the various powers' control, the miniature ancient world contained much better opportunities than the main continent. Hence, many experts had flocked to the miniature ancient world seeking to improve their mana bodies. If there really existed a tool that could upgrade a player's mana body, the various superpowers old monsters would probably go crazy for it. "I am confident in Miss Snow's strength, so I can offer you a bonus benefit if you become an official member," Shifeng said, smiling as he looked at Gentle Snow. "So long as you become an official member, I will give you an ancient god's blood and help you upgrade your mana body." When Lin Yaoyu heard Shifeng's offer, she quickly looked to Gentle Snow and said, "Big Sis Snow, you might as well become an official member. If you have the ancient god's blood, you might just be able to get the rumored epic mana body. With it, your chances of reaching Tier 6 will become significantly greater." Currently, Gentle Snow was in possession of a peak gold mana body. Going by the ancient god's blood's description, Gentle Snow should have a high chance of upgrading her mana body to epic rank if she used it. Even the 5 great super guilds old monsters didn't necessarily have an epic mana body. The amount of help Gentle Snow could gain from an epic mana body would be unimaginable. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 151, Monstrous Talent. Chapter 151, Monstrous Talent. After listening to Lin Yaoyu's suggestion, Gentle Snow stopped hesitating and nodded to Shifeng's offer. Then, she signed Zero Wing's membership contract and became an official member of the Zero Wing Alliance. She'd be lying if she said if the ancient god's blood didn't tempt her. Even the various super guilds old monsters might abandon their original guilds and join Zero Wing if offered the chance to get their hands on an ancient god's blood. After all, the gap between Tier 5 and Tier 6 was massive in God's domain. It was even more so in the real world. The various international corporations in the real world might treat Tier 5 expert players respectfully, but they wouldn't bend their backs over to please these Tier 5 experts. They also wouldn't be afraid of offending a Tier 5 expert should the situation call for it. However, it was a different story for Tier 6 God-ranked experts. When dealing with a God-ranked expert, the various international corporations would behave as if they were dealing with their ancestors. They'd be too busy currying favor to consider offending a God-ranked expert. Meanwhile, an epic mana body was something that could drastically increase a Tier 5 player's chances of reaching Tier 6. It was something that no external item could replace. Since you've signed the contract, you are now an official member of Zero Wing, Miss Snow. You'll have a much more convenient time entering Abyssal Star City. You'll also get to enjoy the benefits of an official member, Shifeng said as he sent a guild invitation to Gentle Snow, to which Gentle Snow accepted without hesitation. Meanwhile, Lin Yaoyu couldn't help but be envious of this situation. It was true that Mysterious Moon had already become partners with Zero Wing. In addition, all of Mysterious Moon's members had also joined the Azura Mercenary Alliance already. However, the only benefits Mysterious Moon's members enjoyed in Abyssal Star City were a 10% discount on their entrance fee and priority entry into the city. If Mysterious Moon's members wanted true freedom in entering Abyssal Star City, they'd have to join Zero Wing or Witch's Sin or become a bronze member in the Azura Mercenary Alliance. However, a lot of contribution points were needed to become a bronze member. Even the various Superpowers members would need a lot of time to become bronze members, let alone everyone else. Subsequently, Shifeng passed a guild transfer scroll for Zero Wing's residence to Gentle Snow and had her head to Abyssal Star City. Meanwhile, Lin Yaoyu accepted the weapon collection quest for Solomon's Sword's fragments and logged out of the game. Then, she contacted her guild to discuss how they should go about collecting these fragments on the main continent. Shifeng offered a ton of contribution points to collect the weapon fragments. Every weapon fragment had a different price tag attached to it, and even the cheapest one was worth several million points, while the most expensive one was worth 10 million. It might be challenging to acquire the Holy Sword Broken Blade, which was worth 10 million points, but obtaining the other 4 epic weapons wasn't a problem. Meanwhile, so long as they managed to collect 2 of these epic weapons, they'd be able to exchange for 1 drop of Ancient God's Blood. Abyssal Star City, Primordial Tower. Here is the Ancient God's Blood and the entry pass for the Primordial Tower's rooms. Use the Ancient God's Blood in one of the tower's rooms. The dense mana in the rooms there should give you a greater chance of upgrading your mana body to the epic rank. Although you can only use the Primordial Tower's rooms for up to 4 days a month, you don't have to worry about shouldering the cost, Shifeng said. Then, he took out a Primordial Mana equipment set and continued, this is a mana equipment set for Berserkers. It should stay useful until you reach Tier 4. Are you that confident in me? Gentle Snow was a little surprised when she saw the items Shifeng had given her. She was certain this was her first time meeting with Shifeng, yet Shifeng's behavior made it seem like he was dealing with an old and trustworthy acquaintance. Gentle Snow was aware of the Primordial Tower's room's existence. According to Lin Yaoyu, members of the Azura Mercenary Alliance would only qualify to use the Primordial Tower's rooms after elevating their membership status to bronze rank. Bronze members were only allowed to use the rooms for 1 hour a day, while silver members and gold members could use the rooms for 2 and 4 hours, respectively. Yet, her entry pass granted her access to the rooms for 4 full days a month. Considering that there were 48 hours in one God's Domain day, she could access the rooms for even longer than the Azura Mercenary Alliance's gold members. It's not confidence, Shifeng said, shaking his head. I know you have such strength. The Zero Wing in his previous life had 5 great experts, and Gentle Snow was one of them. Every one of Zero Wing's 5 great experts had strength rivaling Tier 6 gods back then. It was also for this reason that Zero Wing could become the #1 guild in their god's domain. I have such strength. Gentle Snow felt confused and surprised when she heard Shifeng's words. Did she really have the strength to warrant such extravagant benefits? However, Shifeng simply chuckled and had Gentle Snow enter the Primordial Tower. Meanwhile, after entering one of the miniature worlds in the Primordial Tower, Gentle Snow couldn't help but be shocked by the miniature world's environment. This place didn't just have dense mana. It was essentially a holy land for learning about the operating principles of mana. Even without trying, she could clearly perceive the operating principles of the mana flowing around her. No wonder he's so confident in me. Gentle Snow didn't know whether to laugh or cry when she recalled Shifeng's trust in her. Zero Wing's training resources had indeed surpassed her imagination. While standing in this miniature world, she felt that she was only 1 step away from fulfilling the conditions to reach Tier 6. Correspondingly, if she still couldn't reach Tier 6 with the help of such an environment, she'd probably have no hopes of doing so for the rest of her life. Gentle Snow quickly shook her head and stopped thinking. After raising the miniature world's mana density to the maximum, she promptly consumed the Ancient God's Blood and focused on upgrading her mana body. Around 10 minutes later, Gentle Snow's mana suddenly skyrocketed in intensity. As a result, the The mana her body passively radiated also began taking on a misty form. A day later, the mana inside the miniature world seemingly found its ruler as it frantically gathered around gentle snow. Meanwhile, the concentration of mana also caused the temperature in gentle snow's vicinity to plummet. When gentle snow eventually stepped out of the miniature world, her presence dumbfounded Su Qianliu and Blackie, who had come to train in the primordial tower. A mana domain? If I remember correctly, isn't she a new member who just started training in the tower yesterday? Where did the guild leader find such an expert? Su Qianliu and Blackie were no longer ignorant about mana domains. So, they quickly recognized that Gentle Snow's mana domain wasn't a pseudo-mana domain. Instead, it was a true mana domain that players could typically only gain at Tier 4. Meanwhile, 2 conditions needed to be met for a Tier 3 player to obtain such a mana domain. The first condition was to be at the Grandmaster Magician standard in mana control. The second condition was to have an epic mana body. Experts capable of meeting both conditions were exceedingly rare, even among the various superpowers. Yet, now, Zero Wing had 2 such experts. "Why did you suddenly call for me, guild leader?" Gentle Snow curiously asked after entering the guild leader's office in Zero Wing's residence. Search hosted. Novel for the original. 100 Flower Palace's vice-guild leader Cleansed Rue suddenly contacted me asking for Zero Wing's help, and the payment she offered is something I cannot refuse. However, 100 Flower Palace only needs 2 of Zero Wing's strongest combatants for this job. Now that you are a part of Zero Wing, I plan to take you with me, Shifeng explained as he set aside the documents in his hands. I will give you 5 million points for taking this quest. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3080_5 million points for one mission? 5 million points for one mission? Gentle Snow couldn't help but look at Shifeng in shock. The Zero Wing Alliance's contribution points were incredibly valuable. This could be seen simply by looking at the Ancient God's Blood, which cost 10 million points per drop. Even if she demanded a main guild city for a drop of Ancient God's Blood, the various superpowers probably wouldn't hesitate to accept the trade. There was no way a superpower would refuse to accept a deal as wonderful as one main city for one expert with an epic mana body. Yet, now, Shifeng was offering the equivalent of half a drop of Ancient God's Blood for just one mission. Unless Shifeng was incredibly generous, it meant that the difficulty of this mission was incredibly high. With 100 Flower Palace's strength, there shouldn't be any dungeon that could trouble them in the current miniature ancient world. Unable to hold back her curiosity, Gentle Snow asked, "Are they asking us to fight against a superpower?" 100 Flower Palace was a top-tier first-rate guild. It must have dispatched quite a few Tier 5 experts to the miniature ancient world. While the miniature ancient world's Hell Mode team dungeons were challenging, they weren't insurmountable challenges if a team consisting of Tier 5 experts and a large number of Refinement Realm experts raided them. At most, it would take some time to complete the raid. Hence, there was no way 100 Flower Palace would pay a huge price just to get Zero Wing's help to raid a team dungeon. Not to mention, this was a price even Zero Wing could not refuse. The only possibility Gentle Snow could think of was that 100 Flower Palace was facing a problem similar to Mysterious Moon in that it was competing against a superpower for resources. No, they're only asking for help to raid a somewhat special secret land, Shifeng said, shaking his head. Raiding a secret land? Yet 100 Flower Palace is only offering 2 slots to Zero Wing. Gentle Snow couldn't help but grow even more confused. What is 100 Flower Palace thinking? There were indeed certain secret lands with extraordinarily high difficulty. There were even some secret lands that superpowers couldn't necessarily raid independently. However, a secret land would typically have a maximum entry limit of 100 players or more. This novel is _hosted_ by hosted novel. It was true that Zero Wing didn't have many experts with great combat standards. However, Zero Wing had the primordial mana equipment sets. If Zero Wing equipped its Refinement Realm experts with these sets, it would have several dozen experts with near Tier 4 strength. While 100 Flower Palace had many experts, those possessing near Tier 4 strength probably didn't amount to more than a handful. So, Gentle Snow had a hard time understanding why 100 Flower Palace was only asking Zero Wing for 2 players. When hiring an outside power to help raid a dungeon or secret land, one would typically pay based on the success or failure of the raid. Rarely anybody would accept payment based on headcount. Since 100 Flower Palace wanted to raid a secret land, the normal decision for it to make would be to assign as many slots as possible to Zero Wing. Or was 100 Flower Palace so confident that Zero Wing could complete the secret land with just 2 players? I already said this secret land is somewhat special, Shifeng said, chuckling. Moreover, the raid this time won't just involve Zero Wing and 100 Flower Palace. It will also involve many experts from another god's domain. These are all the slots 100 Flower Palace can take out for now. Many experts from another god's domain. Gentle Snow was shocked by Shifeng's words. How is this possible? The boundary mountain range has yet to open. How can many players from the other god's domain show up on our side already? Gentle Snow was aware that Shifeng's identity was extraordinary and that it was likely that he came from another god's domain. However, the various gods' domains were strictly separated from each other. It might be possible for one player to appear in their god's domain, but it shouldn't be possible for many Outerworld players to appear right now. No, it's not the other god's domain connected to the miniature ancient world, but a completely different one instead, Shifeng said, shaking his head. The stratified abyssal realm. I doubt you've heard of this name before, but this is a special space that connects the endless abyss with the many worlds of God's domain. It is also one of the few places that allow players from the many worlds of God's domain to gather and interact with each other. The only problem is that it has a strict level limit, and players are prohibited from entering it once they exceed the level limit. 100 Flower Palace obtained a key that grants access to a special secret realm by chance, and that secret realm houses a pathway leading to the stratified abyssal realm. However, that pathway is sealed behind multiple seals. Aside from having a level limit of 110, the pathway also has a strict entry limit that makes it nigh impossible to clear. Originally, 100 Flower Palace hadn't planned on challenging this pathway due to the impossible difficulty. However, recently, 100 Flower Palace found out that it wasn't the only power that had access to that secret land. Instead, a power from another god's domain also had access to it. This Outerworld power also has a key for the secret land. Or, more specifically, one part of the full key. When these 2 key fragments are used together, they can weaken the seals on the stratified abyssal realm's pathway. So, 100 Flower Palace and that Outerworld power agreed to work together. Since the pathway only allowed 12 players to enter at a time, both sides will send 6 players each. Then, once they clear the pathway, they will split the awarded entry slots for the stratified abyssal realm based on their performance during the raid. So, 100 Flower Palace hopes that we can send 2 people to help in the raid. As for the compensation, I doubt I'd need to tell you what it is. The entry slots for the stratified abyssal realm? Gentle Snow answered instinctively. Although she didn't know what kind of place the stratified abyssal realm was, the fact that it connected the many worlds of God's domain already made it invaluable. It should be known that the boundary mountain range was merely a gathering place for 2 gods' domains. Even then, the various superpowers were already losing their minds over it. That's right. Shifeng nodded. So long as we can help 100 Flower Palace outperform that other power, 100 Flower Palace is willing to give us half of its entry slot. Although the 2 powers had agreed to leave each other with a minimum number of entry slots, the guaranteed amount was only 10% of the total awarded slots. In other words, it was possible for one side to obtain up to 90% of the total awarded slots. When neither side knew about the other's background, no amount of preparation could be considered excessive. There was no saying whether the other side would seek help from other experts and powers, either. However, 100 Flower Palace dared not seek the help of the various superpowers. Or, more specifically, it dared not seek the help of a power capable of destroying it. Yet, at the same time, the power it sought help from also needed to have extremely powerful experts. This was a very conflicting set of criteria, and only a few powers could meet it. Meanwhile, Zero Wing happened to be one of these powers. Currently, the various superpowers peak experts had already reached level 105, which was also the recommended level to raid the pathway. So, 100 Flower Palace naturally couldn't sit still any longer. After all, the other side didn't come from the miniature ancient world. There was a possible chance that the other side might find a group of level 110 players and forcibly break through the seals. If that happened, 100 Flower Palace would end up with nothing. Hence, Cleansed Rue had sought out Shifeng to establish such a partnership. Of course, 100 Flower Palace wasn't so generous as to give away half of the slots to the stratified abyssal realm just for some help. It had also attached an additional condition: the Primordial Tower's training slots. 100 Flower Palace demanded to acquire 20 silver membership slots and 80 bronze membership slots in the Azura Mercenary Alliance. To put it bluntly, if not for 100 Flower Palace and the other powers discovering the Primordial Tower's uniqueness, 100 Flower Palace wouldn't have sought out Zero Wing for partnership so quickly. If you don't have any problems on your side, we'll head over there now. 100 Flower Palace is quite anxious about this matter. I've also been waiting for you to come out this entire time, Shifeng said as he took out 2 translucent crystals. Then, he passed one of them to Gentle Snow and continued, "This is the teleportation crystal for the secret land. Although it can only be used once, it can teleport players directly into the secret land. I'm ready anytime." After Gentle Snow finally understood the cause and effect of this situation, a hint of anticipation appeared in her eyes. After all, this was a good opportunity to learn about other gods' domain. Afterward, Shifeng and Gentle Snow disappeared from the office as they got teleported to the secret land. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 153, Outerworld Strength. Chapter 153, Outerworld Strength. Dragonfall Secret Land, Sealed Land. The sealed land was like a gigantic underground maze, and the entrance to this maze was closed off by a set of majestic stone doors. Currently, 24 players were gathered in front of these doors, and every one of these players radiated an aura that would cause even refinement realm experts to tremble. This was because even the weakest one of these players was a void realm expert. If these 24 players operated as one group, even the various superpowers of God's domain would have to be wary of them. Currently, these 24 players were split into 2 separate teams. Of the 2 teams, the one that stood out the most would have to be the team standing before 100 Flower Palace's team. Every player in this team had already reached level 110, which was the maximum level limit of the Dragonfall Secret Land. However, what was shocking about these players wasn't their levels. Instead, it was their equipment standard. If one inspected them using an advanced identification skill, one would find that half of these people were equipped with 1 or 2 fragmented legendary items. Some of them even wielded fragmented legendary weapons. As for the others, even the weakest among them wielded a magic weapon that rivaled fragmented legendary weapons. In contrast, even the strongest player on 100 Flower Palace's team was only at level 105 and fully equipped with epic items. Just what is the guild leader thinking? Why did he agree to partner with such a small guild? A short and muscular middle-aged man with a big beard said discontentedly as he looked at 100 Flower Palace's team. "Our Tower Alliance can still lift the seal even without the other half of the key. It's only a matter of time. It can't be helped. We might be able to break the seal by ourselves, but it'll cost us too much to do so. We already had to resort to borrowing some resources from other guilds to let us revert to level 110, Tier 3, a demidragon woman with a large tail said, sighing. If we try to send any more people here, we'll run the risk of exposing the stratified abyssal realm to the other powers. So, our best bet right now is to partner with 100 Flower Palace. Although they are indeed a little weak, they are still more or less useful. I heard that a miniature ancient world appeared in their god's domain, and that miniature ancient world requires them to restart their progress from level 100. That would explain why their level and equipment are so inferior, an elven man said as he looked at 100 Flower Palace's beautiful members. Then, he smiled and continued, "It's funny how they think they are doing a good job hiding their origins. I'm guessing that their god's domain should have only appeared recently. I can't believe they don't have even one demi-human species among them." Many players in God's domain sought to convert to a demi-human race. This was because demi-humans possessed talent and combat power surpassing humans. The only problem with playing as a demi-human was the greater difficulty of getting promoted to a higher tier. However, under the same tier, the raw strength of demi-humans far surpassed that of humans. The typical God's domain would see at least 1/3 of its player population playing as a demi-human. Some of the stronger God's domains would even have 2/3 of its player population playing as demi-humans. Yet, out of the dozen members 100 Flower Palace had sent here, not even one was a demi-human. This was a very strange situation. The only explanation for this situation was that 100 Flower Palace came from a God's domain that had appeared only recently. Moreover, it was a God's domain that had yet to come into contact with the greater God's domain. Hence, it had very few demi-human legacies. Isn't that obvious? Just by looking at their combat standards and the way they use their strength, you can tell that their God's domain has only opened recently, the middle-aged dwarven man said. These primitive people don't even know that we can tell the strength of their God's domain simply by looking at their combat standards. That's right. What's even funnier is that they are under the belief that they can perform well later in the sealed land, the Demidragon woman said. They have no idea that even if we lowered our equipment standard to match theirs, they still wouldn't be able to contribute half as much as us. The difference in race was only one small difference between the various worlds of God's domain. What truly separated the various God's domains was their ability to make use of their strength. Meanwhile, when it came to this aspect, 100 Flower Palace's members were no different than cavemen. They had no idea how to use the raw strength they had developed at all. It was akin to someone having a mountain of treasure but having no idea how to use these treasures to enrich themselves. We've made a severe miscalculation this time, Crimson Heart, the first vice-guild leader of 100 Flower Palace, said, a hint of helplessness appearing in her eyes when she looked at the Tower Alliance's members. Even with Black Flame's help, I doubt we can achieve a good performance inside the sealed land. Previously, Crimson Heart had more or less expected the Tower Alliance to be a powerful guild. However, after seeing the experts the Tower Alliance sent, she realized that she had severely underestimated the strength of Outerworld players. Even though the experts of both sides had similar combat standards, Crimson Heart could tell that there was a stark difference in quality between their experts. It was especially true for the 6 players representing the Tower Alliance in the upcoming raid. In addition to all 6 being Domain Realm experts, Crimson Heart suspected that they were also Tier 6 God-ranked experts. The reason she thought so was because she had only ever felt such a feeling of powerlessness when standing before a Tier 6 God-ranked expert. Meanwhile, all 6 of the Tower Alliance's Domain Realm experts gave her such a feeling. If it were up to their God's domain, only the 5 great super guilds would have the courage to send 6 God-ranked experts into a secret land with a level limit of 110. Moreover, it'd require all 5 of them working together to form such a party. Cleansed Rue also nodded in agreement with Crimson Heart's words. Although their 2 teams had yet to clash, the intuition she had developed over her long years of combat told her that all 6 of the Tower Alliance's representatives were monsters. Even if their guild leader came along with them, it was unlikely that they could match the Tower Alliance's team's performance inside the sealed land. They'd be fortunate if the main god system would even deem their efforts worth 30% of the raid contributions. While 100 Flower Palace's members were feeling helpless, 2 figures appeared at the teleportation area a short distance away. Have all their members finally arrived? The middle-aged dwarven man said as he picked up his fragmented legendary hammer from the ground. Then, when he took a closer look at the 2 new arrivals, a look of surprise appeared on his face as he said, one of them is quite high-leveled, but what is up with the level 1031? Is she here to make up the numbers? The monsters inside the sealed land were about level 110, so players would have to be at level 105 to fight the monsters effectively. So, having a level 103 player come here didn't make sense. It should be known that the difficulty rating of monsters would increase by a rank if there was more than a 5-level gap. Rather than recruiting a level 103 expert with superior combat standards, it'd be much better to recruit a level 105 player with slightly inferior combat standards. After all, battles with monsters were different from battles with other players. While combat standards were important, Damage output was also very important. At this moment, the Tower Alliance's members weren't the only ones surprised by this situation. 100 Flower Palace's members were similarly stunned. The Snow Goddess? Didn't she disappear from God's domain long ago? TL notes, only one chapter today. I've severely underestimated my ability to procrastinate. I swear I'll make up for the missing chapter tomorrow. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3082 TL notes, change made to Chapter 153, Sealed Land-Sealing Labyrinth. Players of the newer generations might not be aware of the Snow Goddess's name, but for the 100 Flower Palace members present, it was a name that was deeply engraved in their minds. When God's domain first launched, Gentle Snow was one of the few female players regarded as a goddess by most players in the virtual gaming world. Meanwhile, out of the several goddesses, Gentle Snow was deemed to have the greatest potential to reach Tier 6. Unfortunately, before Gentle Snow could reach Tier 6, she suddenly vanished from God's domain. Her disappearance had sparked many debates at the time. Even Ouroboros, the first-rate guild Gentle Snow belonged to, had suffered a huge dip in reputation, and it took the guild quite some time before it managed to recover. So, now that Gentle Snow had suddenly reappeared before them after all these years, it was inevitable that 100 Flower Palace's members were shocked. Why would Gentle Snow appear in Zero Wing? Everyone thought she had died after all these years of silence. I never thought she would actually make her reappearance in Zero Wing. Could she be someone else who just looks like Gentle Snow? Unlikely. I saw Gentle Snow during God's Domain's launch. Although her appearance has changed a little, her presence is still the same as before. So, she should be Gentle Snow. 100 Flower Palace's members couldn't help but discuss Gentle Snow when they saw her approaching together with Shifeng. Not only did a legendary individual from the past make a reappearance, but she had even become a member of Zero Wing. If news of this got out, it would definitely attract the attention of many powers. Currently, Zero Wing was already one of the most famous guilds in God's domain. It was also publicly acknowledged that Zero Wing was close to rivaling the various superpowers when it came to resources and advantages in the miniature ancient world. Now that the Snow Goddess had also joined Zero Wing, it would undoubtedly increase the guild's overall strength. What a pity. After Crimson Heart scrutinized Gentle Snow for a moment, she let out a rueful sigh and said, if she hadn't disappeared from God's domain all those years ago, she would have long since become a Tier 6 God-ranked expert already. Based on her observations of Gentle Snow's movements, Crimson Heart could tell that Gentle Snow was only at the Void Realm standard. Gentle Snow's combat standard remained the same as when she disappeared from God's domain. She might have the ability to perceive her surroundings clearly, but she lacked the ability of Domain Realm experts to turn her surroundings into her weapon. While Void Realm experts were rare among the various first-rate powers and superpowers, that was it. They were nowhere near as strong and useful as Domain Realm experts. Take the current situation, for example. The Void Realm expert was merely the minimum combat standard required to enter the Sealing Labyrinth. If Gentle Snow hadn't disappeared all those years ago, she would have long since reached the Domain Realm already. She might have reached the next level in the Domain Realm. Sorry for the wait. It took some time to prepare, Shifeng said apologetically as he looked at 100 Flower Palace's members. We are already more than grateful that you are willing to come here in person, Mr. Black Flame. We won't even mind waiting for another day if it means we can get your help, Crimson Heart said, her eyes filled with shock and anticipation when she saw that Shifeng had already reached level 109. I'm afraid we'll have to trouble you to lead us this time, Mr. Black Flame. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that Shifeng was 100 Flower Palace's only chance of securing more slots in the raid this time. After all, there was a high chance that all 6 of the Tower Alliance's representatives were Tier 6 God-ranked experts. However, after seeing that Shifeng had already reached level 109, Crimson Heart felt that their side wasn't without a fighting chance. After all, there wasn't much of a level difference between him and the Tower Alliance's representatives. Not to mention, Shifeng was also a bona fide God-ranked expert with a true mana domain. No problem. However, I have to reiterate that all of the loot we get inside the ceiling labyrinth belongs to Zero Wing. Half of the slots you get in the end will also belong to Zero Wing, Shifeng said. The maze sealing the stratified abyssal realm's pathway was a huge treasure trove. Although the loot inside the maze wasn't as valuable as the entry slots to the stratified abyssal realm, it was still more than enough to cause any power to go crazy. This was because every ceiling labyrinth had a chance of dropping lineage crystals. Lineage crystals were incredibly valuable treasures. Although they had an incredibly low drop rate, so long as one dropped, even the various superpowers would fight to get it. This was because a lineage crystal could allow players to mutate their lineage, obtain a bona fide rare race, and gain talents outside the reach of most human players. With the lineage crystal, players wouldn't have to do a bunch of troublesome quests to convert their race. In addition, the lineage crystal also granted players the freedom to choose from several hundred races to convert into. Of course, the lineage crystal was only valuable to God's domains that had yet to gain access to the greater God's domain. For those already linked to the greater God's domain, the lineage crystal was a relatively common item. Some of the older gods' domains even had 1/3 of their player population converted into a rare race already. However, now that their god's domain had yet to gain access to the greater god's domain, the lineage crystal could become a capital for Zero Wing to grow stronger. Since we are relying on Zero Wing for the raid this time, 100 Flower Palace will not ask for any of the loot, Crimson Heart said, nodding. While Crimson Heart was speaking, the Tower Alliance's members had also walked over. I see you are quite confident, Vice Guild Leader Crimson. You are already discussing how you'll split the loot before we even start raiding the labyrinth, the middle-aged dwarven man from the Tower Alliance named Bloodhammer said contemptuously as he looked at Crimson Heart. Then, impatiently, he asked, so, can we open the ceiling labyrinth now? Opening the ceiling labyrinth required a special key. Although it was possible to open it with just half of the key, the labyrinth's raid difficulty would be doubled. Find the original at *hosted novel. Yes. Everyone on our side is here already, Crimson Heart said. Although she felt a little angered by Bloodhammer's snide remark, she didn't show it on her face. After all, the Tower Alliance indeed possessed the strength to ridicule 100 Flower Palace. Subsequently, Crimson Heart and Bloodhammer each took out a key and injected mana into their respective keys. Immediately, the two keys radiated a dazzling glow, and the tightly shut stone doors slowly opened up a gap that allowed for several people to enter. After the gigantic doors opened, a dark and ancient aura flowed out from the gap, the aura causing everyone present to shudder involuntarily. What dense power of darkness, the Demidragon woman exclaimed. As expected of a place that connects the stratified abyssal realm. If a dark race were to live inside this place, they'd have a significantly easier time breaking through to higher tiers. Alright, let's head inside. The sooner we reach the 5th underground floor and kill the Guardian boss, the sooner we can enter the stratified abyssal realm, the elven man standing beside the Demidragon woman said, an excited look appearing on his face. He wasn't a normal elf, but a dark elf instead. So, the denser the power of darkness in an area, the more beneficial it would be to him in his development. The strength he could exhibit would also increase significantly. Hearing the elven man's words, the Tower Alliance's 5 other representatives nodded and charged straight into the labyrinth, showing no care for 100 Flower Palace's representatives whatsoever. Rather than operate as a team of 12, they operated as a party of 6 instead. Meanwhile, when Shifeng saw Rain Song looking at him anxiously, he chuckled and said, alright, let's head inside as well. The 4 players 100 Flower Palace had sent to participate in the raid possessed extraordinary strength. Their class distribution was also excellent. Rain Song was a level 105 Guardian Knight, Crimson Heart was a spear-wielding level 105 Berserker, Cleansed Rue was a level 105 Elementalist, and Still Moon was a level 105 Cleric. Rain Song and Still Moon were Void Realm experts, while Crimson Heart and Cleansed Rue were Domain Realm experts. Even with the addition of a swordsman and berserker like Shifeng and Gentle Snow, the party would still have a good class distribution. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3083 Ceiling Labyrinth, First Underground Floor. Ceiling Labyrinth, First Underground Floor. As soon as Shifeng's party entered the dimly lit labyrinth, they immediately felt a suppressive power causing their bodies to feel heavier. However, this power didn't achieve this effect by strengthening the gravity acting on them. Instead, it influenced their minds into thinking that their bodies had grown heavier. Meanwhile, under this suppressive effect, they'd be fortunate if they could exhibit even half of their usual combat power. No wonder the Tower Alliance didn't dare to raid the labyrinth with just half of the key, cleansed Rue thought to herself, frowning when she felt the mental oppression that came from all directions. Not only does this place make our bodies feel heavier, but it also inhibits our ability to manipulate mana. It'd be impossible to release a mana domain in this environment. Although none of their basic attributes had changed, their combat standards had plummeted the moment they entered the ceiling labyrinth. Despite being at the domain realm, cleansed Rue could, at most, exhibit combat standards at the flowing water realm right now. As for Rain Song and Still Moon, who were only at the void realm standard, they could, at most, exhibit combat standards at the refinement realm. Paired with their equipment standard, each of them could just barely cope with a Grand Lord of the same level by themselves right now. It should be known that Rain Song and Still Moon were both capable of fighting against Tier 4 mythic monsters of the same level to a standstill under normal circumstances. Moreover, they could hold their ground for a relatively long time. However, unlike Hundred Flower Palace's members, neither Shifeng nor the Tower Alliance's 6 representatives were surprised by this situation. One could not interpret a ceiling labyrinth using the standards of the average dungeon. Ceiling labyrinths were incredibly mysterious, and it was rumored that ancient gods were responsible for creating them. In front of an ancient god, even a Tier 6 god was no different than an infant. Meanwhile, when operating inside a construction built by ancient gods, unless one had already reached Tier 6, one would have no choice but to comply with the rules set inside the construction. Meanwhile, a minute after Shifeng's party started traversing deeper into the labyrinth, they heard fighting coming from a passage a short distance ahead. When they moved closer to the source of the noise, they saw Bloodhammer's party clashing against 100 or so level 110 gargoyle guards. Gargoyle Guard, Grand Lord, level 110 HP 500 million. Upon seeing the stats of these gargoyle guards, Crimson Heart and the other 100 Flower Palace members couldn't help but frown. These gargoyles were equipped with weapons and possessed bodies made out of demonized rock, which was much tougher than steel. In addition to having 3-meter-tall bodies, they also possessed 4 arms. So, their combat style was completely different from humans. They also possessed combat standards at the Trial Tower's 7th floor standard. With their current circumstances, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that each one of these gargoyle guards was as strong as an expert like Rain Song. Just the thought of fighting over 100 of these gargoyle guards with their party of 6 gave 100 Flower Palace's members goosebumps. However, in front of the Tower Alliance's party, these gargoyle guards were of no threat at all. It was especially so for Bloodhammer and the Demidragon woman, who were responsible for opening a path for the party. Bloodhammer could easily knock the gargoyles away with just one swing from his hammer. Some of the gargoyles he sent flying would even hit other gargoyles and send them flying as well, creating a domino effect. If speaking purely in terms of the strength attribute, Bloodhammer was already on par with level 110 mythic monsters. The performance of the Demidragon woman was even more exaggerated. The 2 shields she wielded looked more like powerful blunt weapons than shields. With just a hit using her shield, she could easily send the gargoyle guards in her path flying several dozen meters away, every one of these gargoyles losing a small chunk of their HPs. Some of the gargoyles she struck were even sent smashing into the labyrinth walls, and these gargoyles had to struggle for quite some time before they could free themselves from the walls. Meanwhile, because of Bloodhammer and the Demidragon woman, the other 4 members of the Tower Alliance's party could advance with relative ease. They didn't have to waste any stamina and concentration on these gargoyle guards. Before a minute had even gone by, the Tower Alliance's party had already advanced a significant distance. Before entering deeper into the labyrinth, though, Bloodhammer had turned to look at Shifeng's party, a trace of gloating and disdain in his eyes. Then, after the Tower Alliance's party progressed deeper into the labyrinth, Some of the gargoyle guards that had fallen behind began returning to their original positions one after another. Damn it! Rain Song cursed when she saw the Tower Alliance's party disappearing from her vision, her eyes filled with resignation. She didn't think that the gargoyle guards would stop chasing after the Tower Alliance's members. With this, they couldn't chase after the Tower Alliance's party even if they wanted to. Although Rain Song was a guardian knight, she wasn't a tier 4 mythic monster. She might be able to hold her ground against 4 or 5 gargoyle guards simultaneously if she had healing support. Still, there was no way she could mimic the Demidragon woman and fend off several dozen gargoyle guards all by herself. She doubted she could do so even if she activated her berserk skill. Meanwhile, Crimson Heart also grew silent when they saw Bloodhammer's party disappearing. Find the original at H**stead novel. The gap in strength between their parties was too massive. With her current strength, she could cope against a dozen or so gargoyle guards by herself. However, if she had to take on so many of these gargoyles by herself, she wouldn't have any energy to spare on opening up a path. Not to mention, she still needed to reserve some energy to protect their party's healer and mage. We don't need to try and keep up with them. It's fine if we just progress at our own pace, Shifeng suddenly said. Ceiling labyrinths typically have 5 floors, and the suppression effect worsens with every floor you progress. The number of monsters you face will also increase. So, it's impossible to clear the labyrinth within a short time. What we should do now is to familiarize ourselves with the combat style of these gargoyle guards. Otherwise, it'll only get more and more difficult for us to progress later. Ceiling labyrinth were constructions built by ancient gods. While it was true that these ceiling labyrinths functioned as seals for pathways leading to the stratified abyssal realm, they also served as trials and legacies. However, few people would actually notice these functions. Everyone was so focused on getting to the stratified abyssal realm that they failed to realize that the ceiling labyrinth itself was also one big treasure trove. Guild leader Black Flame, every one of these gargoyle guards has 500 million HP. Moreover, they'll swarm us as soon as we approach them. Out of everyone in our party, I'm afraid you are the only one who can survive fighting against so many of them, Rain Song said with a bitter smile. Rain Song had personally witnessed Shifeng in action, so she knew that he could exhibit strength at the tier 4 standard. With such strength, the gargoyle guards would be no different than common monsters to Shifeng. However, it was a different story for everyone else in the party. They didn't possess tier 4 strength, nor were they tier 6 god-ranked experts. If over 100 gargoyle guards swarmed them, even if Shifeng managed to show amazing performance and pin down several dozen gargoyle guards by himself, it would still be useless. After all, the rest of them would still need to cope with a dozen or so gargoyle guards each. Even assuming they managed to stay alive, they would still have to figure out a way to kill the gargoyle guards. However, with the gargoyle guards having 500 million HP each, their party would probably die from exhaustion before they could kill even one gargoyle guard. If all you're worried about is getting surrounded, that's a simple problem, Gentle Snow said as she looked at 100 Flower Palace's members. I'll restrain their movements for you. Combined with your skills, they'll probably have a hard time forming a proper encirclement around you. You'll restrain them? Cleansed Rue couldn't help but look at Gentle Snow in confusion. The ceiling labyrinth prohibited the use of magic scrolls and tools. It was also this limitation that gave 100 Flower Palace and the Tower Alliance a headache. My mana domain happens to be proficient at this aspect, Gentle Snow frankly stated. After saying so, Gentle Snow walked ahead of the party. Then, as she moved closer and closer to the gargoyle guards, everyone could feel the surrounding mana growing cold and stagnating. A mana domain? How is this possible? Cleansed Rue was filled with disbelief as she looked at Gentle Snow. How can she still form a mana domain while being subjected to the mental oppression here? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3084 As soon as Gentle Snow extended her mana domain, the 100 or so gargoyle guards guarding the passage immediately had their mobility and reaction speed slowed dramatically, their bodies behaving as if submerged inside a swamp. Their combat standards had also fallen to the Trial Tower's 5th floor standard. Even a first-rate expert could easily toy with the gargoyle guards in their current state. As soon as Gentle Snow extended her mana domain, the 100 or so gargoyle guards guarding the passage immediately had their mobility and reaction speed slowed dramatically, their bodies behaving as if submerged inside a swamp. Their combat standards had also fallen to the Trial Tower's 5th floor standard. Even a first-rate expert could easily toy with the gargoyle guards in their current state. Space freezing. Crimson Heart was greatly shocked when she saw Gentle Snow's mana domain. Is she really a berserker? Even Cleansed Rue, who used to be a Tier 5 divine mage, could not release her mana domain in an environment with such powerful mental oppression. Yet, not only did Gentle Snow manage to use her mana domain, but she had also managed to execute space freezing with it. This had already gone beyond surprising and reached the realm of fantasy. It should be known that space freezing was an advanced method of using a mana domain, and it was impossible to execute without profound knowledge of mana. The technique was so complex that only a small minority of Tier 5 magical class experts could execute it. Yet, Gentle Snow had successfully used space freezing despite being a berserker. Let's join in as well. She won't be able to handle so many gargoyle guards by herself, Chiffong said when he saw that 100 Flower Palace's members remained in a daze. I'll distract the gargoyles while the rest of you focus them down. The gargoyle guards might have had their combat standards reduced to the Trial Tower's 5th floor standard, but they were still level 110 Grand Lords. A group of more than 100 gargoyle guards was more than capable of wearing out a domain realm. If they didn't reduce the gargoyle guards' numbers quickly, even Chiffong would be whittled to death, let alone Gentle Snow. Meanwhile, after hearing Chiffong's reminder, Crimson Heart and the others promptly snapped out of their daze and began taking action. The formation Crimson Heart and the others took was simple. Crimson Heart and Cleansed Rue would focus on dealing damage, Still Moon would focus on healing, and Rain Song would focus on guarding Gentle Snow. Maintaining a mana domain while in combat was very taxing for players. There was also the ever-present mental oppression in the labyrinth. If Gentle Snow were to fight and keep her mana domain functioning normally in this situation, her concentration would deplete rapidly. So, to reduce Gentle Snow's burden, the best solution would be to have her avoid combat. For a time, Chiffong could be seen distracting over 90% of the gargoyle guards while the rest tried to target Gentle Snow. However, due to the gargoyles' weakened combat standards and slugging movements, none of them could get past Rain Song. As for Crimson Heart and Cleansed Rue, they frenziedly targeted a specific gargoyle guard, with Chiffong sneaking in a few blows from time to time. The gargoyle guards might have 500 million HP, but the battle recovery effect did not exist in the ceiling labyrinth. This was true for both players and monsters. In addition, both Crimson Heart and Cleansed Rue were capable of using basic combat techniques at a masterful level, every basic combat technique they executed allowing them to deal over 1 million damage. If they combined their basic combat techniques with Tier 3 skills and spells, they could cause several million damage per attack. One could say that the two of them had thoroughly utilized their near Tier 4 basic attributes. Crimson Heart's damage output was especially noteworthy as she executed up to 4 combat techniques every 3 seconds. She had perfectly incorporated basic combat techniques into her every move, reaching the realms of truth's entry level in the truest sense. Under the combined attacks of Crimson Heart and Cleansed Rue, the first gargoyle guard fell in less than 2 minutes. At the same time, Gentle Snow and 100 Flower Palace's 4 members saw their experience bars increasing by a small but visible chunk. Roughly an hour later, Gentle Snow became the first player in the party to level up, her level increasing from 103 to 104. Her leveling speed here was not the least bit slower than the grinding expedition Chiffong held for Zero Wings members in the Burning Land. As the number of gargoyle guards decreased, Chiffong also got to attack more and more frequently. This, in turn, accelerated the party's speed at killing the gargoyle guards. After another 2 hours passed, the last of the 100-plus gargoyle guards collapsed and disintegrated into dust. Something dropped. When the last gargoyle guard disappeared, Rain Song noticed that the Grand Lord had actually dropped an item. Specifically, it was a dark gold-colored crystal that was the size of a fingernail. Initially, Rain Song had thought that the gargoyle guards did not have any loot since none of the gargoyle guards they defeated had dropped anything. She thought that they were merely here to contribute EXP to players. She didn't think that the last gargoyle guard they defeated would actually drop something. Meanwhile, when Shifeng saw the dark gold crystal, a hint of excitement suddenly flashed in his calm eyes. This ceiling labyrinth is amazing. I didn't think this place would drop something like this. Shifeng couldn't help but smile when he picked up the dark gold crystal. Did something good drop, guild leader? Gentle Snow asked, her curiosity piqued when she saw the excited look on Shifeng's face. It's an advanced lineage crystal, Shifeng said, not bothering to withhold information on the dark gold crystal from Gentle Snow. This is an amazing item that's highly sought after even among outerworld experts. Normally, ceiling labyrinths would only drop the standard lineage crystal. Although they also had a chance of dropping advanced lineage crystals, the drop rate was abysmally low. Players were unlikely to see an advanced lineage crystal drop even after looting over 100 normal lineage crystals. However, so long as an advanced lineage crystal dropped, it would cause even outerworld experts to lose their minds. The opportunity to convert to a non-human race might not be anything special to outerworld experts. However, the opportunity to convert to a higher creature was an entirely different story. The higher creature here wasn't referencing the standard higher races such as pure-blooded elves and giants. Instead, it referred to higher life forms with superior life ratings. Take the Demidragon woman from the Tower Alliance, for example. Despite being at Tier 3, her life rating was already close to rivaling the life rating of Tier 4 human players. This was also why the Demidragon woman managed to show such extraordinary performance against the gargoyle guards. Meanwhile, the advanced lineage crystal was an item capable of instantly transforming a normal human player into a higher life form like the Demidragon. Can it let players become very strong? Gentle Snow asked, an interested look appearing on her face. Of course. If you absorb this thing, it wouldn't even be an exaggeration to say that you'll become invincible among those of the same tier, Shifeng said, chuckling. But absorbing this crystal requires the help of a magic array that's constructed using a large amount of mana stones. If you're interested, I can sell it to you for a member price of 10 million points. Find the original at H*stead novel. Shifeng was already incredibly generous with his price of 10 million points. If it were up to the Greater God's domain's various powers, they'd charge their members a minimum of one top-tier fragmented legendary item or something of equal value for an advanced lineage crystal. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3085_10 million points. 10 million points. Gentle Snow was astonished when she heard Shifeng's offer. She didn't think that the dark gold crystal would be worth as much as the ancient god's blood. While she didn't know what invincible among those of the same tier meant exactly, she had personally experienced the ancient god's blood's powerful effects. The ancient god's blood might not have given her any additional basic attributes, but the improvements it did provide had allowed her to achieve a qualitative leap in strength. These changes would also be very useful when she tried to ascend to higher tiers in the future. At this time, Gentle Snow suddenly realized why Shifeng had demanded all of the loot inside the ceiling labyrinth. Evidently, Shifeng had done so for the advanced lineage crystals. The ancient god's blood was an item that assisted players in ascending to higher tiers, while the advanced lineage crystal granted players unparalleled strength among those of the same tier. If a player could get their hands on both of these items, they'd gain an unimaginable advantage over other players. So long as Zero Wing was given enough time, Gentle Snow was certain Zero Wing would grow into a behemoth that would overshadow even the 5 great super guilds. After Shifeng's party rested for a moment, they continued progressing deeper into the labyrinth. The ceiling labyrinth was massive, and the first floor alone was already 1/3 the size of a standard grinding map. Fortunately, all Shifeng's party needed to do was head to the center. They didn't have to explore the entire floor. Even so, Shifeng's party had still taken over half a day to clear the labyrinth's first underground floor. Meanwhile, during this half a day, Gentle Snow, and 100 Flower Palace's members saw a significant improvement in their combat technique proficiency and levels. Gentle Snow had reached level 105, while Crimson Heart and the others reached level 106. They could kill the gargoyle guards with much greater efficiency thanks to this improvement. However, with each subsequent floor the party progressed, Crimson Heart and the others also grew increasingly anxious. After all, unlike their party, the Tower Alliance's party had progressed through the labyrinth without killing any monsters. At the rate their two parties progressed, there was a high chance that the Tower Alliance's party would have already cleared the labyrinth when they reached the 5th floor. After 4 days of constant fighting, Shifeng's party finally reached the ceiling labyrinth's 5th floor. Meanwhile, Crimson Heart and the others no longer panicked as soon as they arrived. After all, the labyrinth remained unconquered even though they had already reached the 5th floor. This meant that the Tower Alliance's party was still having trouble clearing it. Evidently, the labyrinth's difficulty was much greater than they imagined. Since that was the case, they might as well listen to Shifeng's commands and focus on increasing their levels and combat technique proficiency. Their party had made significant improvements during these past 4 days. In addition to all of them reaching level 109, they had also made significant improvements in their proficiency in the realms of truth. Crimson Heart, for example, had already reached the Ascension realm, which was the second stage of the realms of truth. It was also the standard that Bloodhammer and the other Tower Alliance members were at. She was only slightly inferior to them due to her lacking experience. Even so, she was already capable of incorporating advanced combat techniques into her every move. However, out of the 5 of them, the person who made the most improvements in the realms of truth was undoubtedly Gentle Snow. She had entered the ceiling labyrinth with only a little knowledge of the realms of truth. Now, though, she had already set foot into the truth realm. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that she was monstrously talented. Of course, aside from Gentle Snow, Crimson Heart, and the others, Shifeng had also acquired a significant harvest during these past 4 days. Firstly, he had already reached level 110 and remained stuck there due to the ceiling labyrinth's restriction. Secondly, he had acquired 4 advanced lineage crystals and 182 normal lineage crystals from all the gargoyle guards they killed. One could say that Shifeng had thoroughly capitalized on the pioneering benefits of this ceiling labyrinth. The only unfortunate part was that there were hardly any monsters on the ceiling labyrinth's 5th underground floor. They would come across a group of 200+ level 112 gargoyle guards from time to time. At this point, a group of this size could no longer threaten Shifeng's party of 6. After wandering on the 5th underground floor for around 6 hours, Shifeng's party arrived at the heart of the 5th floor. It was also the location where the Gate of Crossing was located. The Gate of Crossing was a 50-meter-tall spatial fissure shrouded in darkness. Currently, though, the fissure was thoroughly sealed by golden runes. Meanwhile, a short distance away from the spatial fissure, the Tower Alliance's party could be seen fighting against a 30-meter-tall, pitch-black metal giant. A titan? Rain Song was dumbfounded when she saw the metal giant. If dragons were known as the symbol of destruction in God's domain, then titans would be considered the symbol of strength. Similar to the dragon race, the titan race was one of the apex races in God's domain, and they were known to be invincible among those of the same tier. They were also the worst nightmare for players. Titans were monsters that resembled NPCs the most. In addition to being extremely intelligent, they also wielded super ancient spells that NPCs of the same tier couldn't wield. If players in God's domain were given a choice, they'd rather face a dragon of the same tier than a titan. No, that's not a titan, Crimson Heart said as she observed the Tower Alliance's fight with the metal giant. The metal giant is clearly a tier 4 mythic monster. Even if the Tower Alliance's members are monsters in their own right, there is no way they stand a chance against a tier 4 titan. That's right. That giant isn't a titan, Shifeng said, nodding in agreement with Crimson Heart as he observed the metal giant fight. It should be a dead titan that has been turned into a puppet. However, while its combat standard might not come close to a living titan, its basic attributes should be no different than an actual tier 4 titan. It should also lack the ability to use super ancient spells. Dark Titan, Mythic, Level 112 HP 15 billion. If a Tier 4 Titan appeared in a ceiling labyrinth that only allowed up to level 110 players to enter, the ancient god that created the Dragonfall Secret Land had definitely created the Secret Land with ill intentions. The ancient god definitely did not intend for players to clear the Secret Land. After all, under normal circumstances, even a team of 100 Tier 4 experts had little to no chances of beating one Tier 4 Titan. Challenging a Tier 4 Titan at Tier 3 was simply an absurd notion. Ancient gods were probably the only existences capable of accomplishing such a feat at the same time as Shifeng's party arrived at the labyrinth's heart. Bloodhammer and the others also noticed their arrival. How did they get here? A hint of surprise appeared in the Demidragon woman's eyes when she glanced at Shifeng's party. They hadn't killed a single gargoyle guard on their way here, and they had done so with the express purpose of hindering Shifeng's party's progression. After all, Shifeng's party did not possess the strength to go up against the gargoyle guards. Meanwhile, if Shifeng's party couldn't reach the Guardian boss, the Tower Alliance would be able to monopolize 90% of the entry slots for the stratified abyssal realm. Yet, now, Shifeng's party had appeared at the Guardian boss's location. Moreover, all 6 of them looked alive and healthy. It seems we've underestimated them a little, Bloodhammer said as he glanced at Crimson Heart and the others. Then, in a contemptuous tone, he continued, but it doesn't matter even if they manage to reach this place. There's no way they can deal with this Dark Titan. The only thing they can do is watch us fight it. Even in the Tower Alliance's party, the only person capable of tanking the Dark Titan was Maria, the Demidragon woman. The Dark Titan's basic attributes were simply too much for most Tier 3 players to handle. In terms of basic attributes, it was definitely on par with superior mythic monsters of the same level. Only Maria, who wielded fragmented legendary shields and possessed strength surpassing the average Tier 4 player, could receive the Dark Titan's attacks and survive. Support us at hosted novel _ if any other Tier 3 metric tons were to try and tank the Dark Titan's attacks, they would die in one move. Ignore them. We need to break away from the fight quickly, Maria said, her voice sounding a little hurried. We've only shaved away 20% of the boss's HP, yet we've already expended over half of our stamina and concentration. We need to think of a better solution to raid this boss. Upon hearing Maria's words, Bloodhammer and the others couldn't help but look at the Dark Titan in frustration. The Dark Titan simply had too much HP. Their party had already reached the Guardian boss on their second day inside the ceiling labyrinth. Afterward, they had constantly been coming up with strategies to raid the Dark Titan. However, even until now, their most successful attempt only saw them shaving off 30% of the Dark Titan's HP. Moreover, they had nearly exhausted themselves and gotten team-wiped on that attempt. Subsequently, Bloodhammer and the others quickly withdrew from the Dark Titan's sphere of activity. Then, once the Dark Titan had stopped chasing them, they sat down and started resting. There was no foreign energy inside the ceiling labyrinth, so they didn't have to concern themselves with their bodies being corroded. Moreover, stamina and concentration recovery rates were seemingly boosted here. So long as they remained outside of combat and ate some food, they could quickly recover to their peak conditions. This had also made raiding the boss significantly easier. They seemed to have given up, guild leader, Gentle Snow said, a surprised look appearing on her face when she saw the Tower Alliance's party resting in the distance. Based on the fight's progression, she could tell that it was only a matter of time before the Tower Alliance's party defeated the Dark Titan. Yet, the Tower Alliance's party had suddenly given up on the raid. Since they are stopping, we'll take their place, Shifeng said, chuckling. You'll use your mana domain, Snow, while Rainsong and I will distract the boss. Crimson Heart and Cleansed Rue, you two look for opportunities to strike. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3086 _ When Shifeng's party started approaching the Dark Titan, the Tower Alliance's members noticed their actions. When Shifeng's party started approaching the Dark Titan, the Tower Alliance's members noticed their actions. Are they planning to fight the Dark Titan? A look of shock appeared on Maria's face as she looked at Shifeng's party. While it was true Shifeng's party no longer had to worry about level suppression since they had already increased their levels, the Dark Titan couldn't be compared using the Gargoyle Guards. The labyrinth's mental oppression existed even in the boss area, so none of them could exhibit their usual combat standards. Maria could only tank the Dark Titan because she was a demi-dragon and possessed a fragmented legendary shield that reduced all damage she received from attacks under the Tier 5 standard by 60%. Even then, she would still lose 1/3 of her HP from just one of the Dark Titan's punches. Meanwhile, from what Maria could tell, Rain Song, the only MT in Shifeng's party, was only geared in epic weapons and equipment. She wasn't playing as a rare race or higher life form, either. With such circumstances, Rain Song would probably disappear from just one punch. They might be thinking that since we can safely retreat from the Dark Titan, they can probably give it a try as well, Bloodhammer said, laughing when he saw Crimson Heart and the others charging at the Dark Titan. This is good. It'll save us the trouble of worrying about their interference when we are fighting the boss. Once they get team-wiped here, it'll take them a few more days before they can come back here. Previously, Bloodhammer had been worried that Shifeng's party would try to sneak in some attacks and increase their contributions while their party was keeping the Dark Titan busy. Meanwhile, this was not an outcome the Tower Alliance wished to see. However, so long as Shifeng's party died here, they'd have to spend the next few days making their way back to the 5th underground floor. We need to come up with an effective strategy quickly. Our food and potions are limited, so we can't afford to waste too much time with the Dark Titan, the Elven man said, returning everyone's attention to the problem at hand. With the Grandmaster mana recovery potions I have left, we can make, at most, 10 more attempts. If we can't beat the Dark Titan in 10 attempts, I'll need to head back to restock my potions. Upon hearing the Elven man's words, the other 5 players in the party couldn't help but feel a little pressured. The Elven man contributed 40% of their party's damage against the Dark Titan by virtue of his Dark Elf race resonating with the Sealing Labyrinth's environment. If they lost the Elven man's damage contribution, raiding the Dark Titan would become impossible. While the Tower Alliance's members were discussing their raid strategy, Shifeng's party had already arrived before the Dark Titan. The 20-meter-tall Dark Titan was like a 6-story building. Even without wielding any weapons, it could already cover a huge range with its arms and legs. Unless players were capable of moving up to 30 yards in the blink of an eye, there was no way they could dodge an attack from the Dark Titan. When Shifeng, who moved at the forefront of the party, entered the Dark Titan's attack range, the Dark Titan sent a punch flying at him without hesitation. The Dark Titan's punch caused even the surrounding space to crack and stagnate, making it incredibly challenging for players to move around in this space. He's charging at the forefront even though he isn't an MT? Is he looking to die? Maria's eyes widened in shock when she saw Shifeng's actions. Shifeng was a swordsman. Yet, rather than trying to assist in dealing damage from the side, he was the first to charge into battle. Seeing this situation, Maria couldn't help but suspect that Shifeng had wrongly chosen his class. However, just as the Dark Titan's fist was about to reach Shifeng, a ripple of energy suddenly spread across the battlefield and enveloped the Dark Titan, causing the Dark Titan's movements to slow down significantly. Find the original at *hosted novel. Space freezing. When the Elven man saw the Dark Titan's movements showing visible signs of slowing down, he promptly noticed the cause. Then, he turned to look at Gentle Snow, shock and confusion on his face as he muttered, "How can she use a mana domain while under such powerful mental oppression?" The Elven man was also an expert capable of casting a mana domain at Tier 3. However, when subjected to the labyrinth's mental oppression, he felt as if needles were constantly pricking his brain. Under such a situation, he couldn't even calmly manipulate his mana, let alone form a mana domain. Before the Elven man could get over his shock, something even more shocking took place on the battlefield. Even after Gentle Snow had inhibited the Dark Titan's movements with her mana domain, Shifeng showed no intentions of dodging the Dark Titan's attack. Instead, he created a spatial tear as he swung the Winter of Eternal Night at the Dark Titan's fist. Swords transmigration. Boom. A loud explosion resonated throughout the spacious hall as fist and sword collided. The shockwaves of the impact also caused cracks to appear in the surrounding space. He blocked it. Maria's eyes were filled with disbelief when she saw Shifeng holding his ground against the Dark Titan's attack. Although the floor under him had cracked and shattered, he had only lost 1/5 of his HP from the attack. He was even more of an MT than an MT like herself. Meanwhile, as soon as Shifeng's HP dropped, Still Moon, the cleric, promptly cast a healing spell and healed his HP back to full. As expected of a Titan. It truly does have astounding strength. The power of its punches is definitely at the Tier 4 peak standard already, Shifeng thought. Then, when he saw the Dark Titan swinging its other fist at him, he promptly switched to wielding his sword with both hands above his head. First sword, Light Shadow. Suddenly, the phantom of a gigantic great sword appeared above Shifeng. Then, this great sword descended and smashed into the Dark Titan's fist. Boom! The sound of the explosion was much more resonant this time. The impact had even caused a storm to brew within the underground hall. Even Maria and the others, who sat over 1,000 yards away, could feel the impact's shockwaves. Meanwhile, unlike the previous exchange, not only did Shifeng not take any damage this time, but he had also managed to rebuff the Dark Titan's fist, the mythic monster's entire arm thrown backward. The Dark Titan had even lost its footing for a moment, being forced to take half a step back before it managed to stabilize its body. -1,131,654. A damage value exceeding over 1,000,000 appeared above the Dark Titan's head. Although this couldn't be considered a significant amount of damage, the eyes of the Tower Alliance's members nearly fell out of their sockets when they saw this outcome. Impossible. He managed to repulse the Dark Titan's attack. How strong is that attack of his? The Dark Titan's attacks are at the Tier 4 peak standard on average. Seeing as he managed to not only repulse the Dark Titan's attack but also damage it, his attack must be very close to the Tier 5 standard already. Tier 5. Wasn't their God's Domain supposed to be one that only appeared recently? The Tower Alliance's members couldn't help but be shocked and confused as they looked at Shifeng. Logically, even a Tier 3 player wielding a fragmented legendary weapon couldn't exhibit power nearing the Tier 5 standard. The only possibility a Tier 3 player could execute such a feat was if they wielded a legendary weapon. However, that clearly wasn't possible. Graysword, you're a swordsman as well. Can you tell what floor he is on? Maria asked as she looked at the half-demonkin, who wielded a grey great sword, sitting next to her. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 159, 4th Floor Expert. Chapter 159, 4th Floor Expert. I can't say for certain, the half-demonkin named Graysword answered. Graysword was a tall and robust man with dark grey skin covered in pitch-black runes. After quietly watching Shifeng's battle for a moment, he hesitantly said, "But according to my experience as a swordsman, anyone capable of executing a saint-level mana technique to such a level of perfection should be a 4th floor expert." A 4th floor expert? Bloodhammer couldn't help but turn to look at Graysword in disbelief when he heard the half-demonkin's words. Their God's Domain shouldn't have access to the greater God's Domain yet, so how can an expert of such caliber appear there already? Before a God's Domain gained access to the greater God's Domain, it would typically categorize its experts based on the realms of refinement. However, in the greater God's Domain, there was only one publicly acknowledged categorization for strength, the World Tower. The World Tower was similar to the Trial Tower available in every God's Domain, and all players in the greater God's Domain ranked their strengths based on their performance in the World Tower. However, compared to the Trial Tower, the World Tower's difficulty was significantly greater. So long as players managed to clear the World Tower's first floor, they would be publicly recognized as experts in the greater God's Domain. Meanwhile, experts of such caliber were welcomed by the various powers in the greater God's Domain. If a player successfully cleared the second floor, they'd become an expert that even the greater God's Domain's various peak powers would actively try to recruit. Meanwhile, experts such as 100 Flower Palace's Cleansed Rue would be at the World Tower's second floor standard. Going one step above would be the third floor experts. These experts were also known as God-ranked experts. Typically, Only Tier 6 God-ranked experts would be capable of clearing the World Tower's third floor. Of course, there were bound to be exceptions since not everyone would have the fortune to reach Tier 6. After all, besides having sufficiently high combat standards, players would also need to have sufficient fortuitous opportunities to get promoted to Tier 6. The current 100-flower Palace's Crimson Heart could just barely be considered a third-floor expert. Everyone in the Tower Alliance's party was similarly at this standard. Unfortunately, they were all stuck at the cusp of reaching Tier 6. As for experts capable of clearing the World Tower's fourth floor, these were existences capable of ranking within the top 10 in their god's domain. Even the Tower Alliance only had one such player in its midst. It should be known that the difficulty of the World Tower's third and fourth floors was worlds apart from each other. The fourth floor's challenge was so difficult that every one of their god's domain's current fourth floor experts had only managed to clear the fourth floor after gaining access to the greater god's domain and sparring numerous times with the god-ranked experts there. Thus, Bloodhammer found it hard to imagine that a god's domain that had yet to gain access to the greater god's domain could produce an expert of such caliber. Not to mention, said expert was only at level 110 and had come to a place like the Ceiling Labyrinth. If that's the case, it might be worth befriending 100-Flower Palace, Maria said. While watching Shi Feng single-handedly tanking the Dark Titan, she couldn't help but re-evaluate the importance of 100-Flower Palace. The stratified abyssal realm is the gathering place for the various gods' domains newbies. Setting aside the native players, the strongest players there are third-floor experts like us. There is no way any power would send a fourth-floor expert there. If we can get a fourth-floor expert's help, we'll have a much easier time establishing a foothold in the stratified abyssal realm. The stratified abyssal realm might be a gathering place for the various gods' domains newbies, but it was also a place highly contested by the powers of the various gods' domains. This was because aside from being rich in rare resources such as the Seven Luminaries crystal, the stratified abyssal realm was also home to many players with superior talent. Due to the stratified abyssal realm's nature, many of its native players grew faster than players based in normal gods' domains. Their chances of becoming second-floor and third-floor experts were also several times higher. Occasionally, fourth-floor experts would even appear in the stratified abyssal realm. Meanwhile, these experts had become a resource fought over by the greater gods' domain's various powers. If guilds could recruit these native experts to their cause, it would significantly help their development. After all, competition in the greater god's domain was incredibly harsh. NPC protection also did not exist in the greater god's domain. Thus, if a guild wished to establish a foothold in the greater god's domain, it would need many capable experts. Meanwhile, so long as the stratified abyssal realm developed to a certain extent, it would become a part of the greater god's domain. Once that happened, recruiting the stratified abyssal realm's experts would become significantly more difficult since every power in the greater god's domain would be competing over these talents. Hence, before the stratified abyssal realm merged with the greater god's domain, the various guilds needed to enter the stratified abyssal realm and snatch up as many of these experts as possible. While Maria and the others were holding their hushed discussion, the Dark Titan's HP was rapidly decreasing due to the attacks of Crimson Heart, Cleansed Rue, and Shi Feng. Every one of their attacks dealt over 1,000,000 damage. From time to time, Rainsong would also take over Shi Feng's job of tanking the Dark Titan, giving Shi Feng the opportunity to execute Light Shadow and shave off over 10 million of the boss's HP. Monsters in the Ceiling Labyrinth did not have any battle recovery, so every HP the Dark Titan lost would be permanent so long as it remained in combat. Thus, even though the Dark Titan had 15 billion HP, it would eventually fall so long as Shi Feng and the others did not run out of stamina and concentration. However, the Dark Titan wasn't as easy of an opponent as everyone thought. When its HP fell to 30%, it suddenly let loose an angry roar. Then, an identical copy of itself split from its body. It can even use Dark Division? Crimson Heart's complexion paled when she looked at the two Dark Titans before her. Dark Division was a Tier 4 super spell that allowed users to create a perfect copy of themselves. Although the spell only had a short duration of several minutes, the doppelganger created would possess all of the original's basic attributes, skills, and spells. Moreover, Even if the doppelganger was killed, it would not affect the main body in any way. They already had their plates full dealing with one Dark Titan. Only death would await them if they had to deal with 2 Dark Titans. The boss would use such a move at 30% HP? How is anyone supposed to raid it? Bloodhammer couldn't help but be dumbfounded when he saw this development. He never thought that the Dark Titan would have such a move in store. Previously, he thought that his party still had a chance of raiding the Dark Titan. All they needed to do was come up with a viable strategy. However, after seeing the Dark Titan use Dark Division, he no longer thought as such. After all, there wasn't a second person in their party capable of tanking the Dark Titan's attacks. But this is a chance for us, Maria suddenly said, her eyes glowing with excitement as she looked at the 2 Dark Titans. Currently, neither of their parties could go up against the Dark Titan on their own. They could only get past this Guardian boss if their parties worked together. Indeed. They'll have no choice but to cooperate with us now, Bloodhammer said, smiling. However, going against Maria and Bloodhammer's expectations, Shifeng had long since expected such a development. As soon as the Dark Titan used Dark Division, he promptly activated the Winter of Eternal Night's World of Frost. Immediately, 9 frost swords appeared around the 2 Dark Titans, each frost sword carrying 120% of Shifeng's strength. Although the Sealing Labyrinth's mental oppression prevented Shifeng from displaying his full potential, he still managed to manipulate the 9 frost swords to the point where every frost sword could execute a basic combat technique. Meanwhile, with the help of the 9 frost swords, Shifeng was able to keep both Dark Titans pinned down. Is he really just a 4th floor expert? This scene dumbfounded Bloodhammer and the others. While they found it shocking that Shifeng had managed to single-handedly suppress the Dark Titan's Berserk mode, they found it even more shocking that he could exert such a high degree of control over the 9 frost swords with their current circumstances. The level of control Shifeng exhibited was simply astounding. At this time, even Crimson Heart, Gentle Snow, and the others were stunned by this situation. Under the Sealing Labyrinth's powerful mental oppression, the most they could do was execute one basic combat technique at a time. Yet, in addition to executing basic combat techniques with all 9 frost swords, Shifeng was also simultaneously clashing with the Dark Titans directly. Subsequently, time passed by quickly. 2 minutes after the Dark Titan used Dark Division, the spell's duration expired, and the second Dark Titan disappeared. Meanwhile, as soon as the second Dark Titan's disappearance, Shifeng promptly attacked the original Dark Titan with all 9 frost swords. World of Frost had a 3-minute duration, which was only 1 minute more than the Dark Titan's Dark Division. In a situation where everyone's stamina and concentration were rapidly depleting, he needed to take advantage of every opportunity to kill the Dark Titan as soon as possible. The Dark Titan already had its hands full fighting Shifeng, so it naturally didn't have any leeway to defend against the 9 frost swords. As a result, the 9 frost swords had free reign over the Dark Titan's defenseless body, causing over 3 million damage per attack. Subsequently, the Dark Titan's HP bar could be seen draining at a rate visible to the naked eye. Seeing this, Crimson Heart and Cleansed Rue also stopped holding back, both of them activating their legacy Berserk skills and doubling their basic attributes. They intended to shave away the Dark Titan's remaining HP in one fell swoop. 20%, 10%, 3%, 1%. Boom. Eventually, the Dark Titan fell to its knees as its HP reduced to 0. TL notes: 1. World Tower. The World Tower, mentioned here, is different from the World Tower, located in Dragonheart Island. If I were to translate in a more direct manner, it'd be World's Tower or Tower of the World. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3088 When the level 112 mythic ranked Dark Titan died, a bright glow enveloped everyone except Shifeng as they reached the highest level permitted in the Dragonfall Secret Land. When the level 112 mythic ranked Dark Titan died, a bright glow enveloped everyone except Shifeng as they reached the highest level permitted in the Dragonfall Secret Land. Immediately afterward, a system announcement rang in the ears of both Shifeng's party members and the Tower Alliance's party members. Regional System Announcement, Sealing Labyrinth unlocked. The pathway to the stratified abyssal realm will be unlocked in 10 minutes. Regional System Announcement, Sealing Labyrinth unlocked. The Sealing Labyrinth will be converted into a standard region in 2 natural days, and the entry limit into the region will be removed. Upon hearing the system announcements, Crimson Heart and the other 100 Flower Palace members couldn't help but grow ecstatic. We did it! Big Sis Rue. Rain Song cheered while shaking cleansed Rue by the shoulders. Our party will get to monopolize 90% of the entry slots now. The Dark Titan might not have battle recovery, but raiding it was still a great challenge. Had the raid continued for 10 more minutes, most of them would have collapsed from stamina and concentration exhaustion. Fortunately, the Dark Titan's HP ran out before they collapsed from exhaustion. You made a huge contribution to the guild this time, Rue. If not for you, we would have lost out on this huge opportunity, Crimson Heart said as she looked at Cleansed Rue. If not for Cleansed Rue strongly recommending 100 Flower Palace choose Zero Wing as its partner and agreeing to Shifeng's seemingly absurd demands, 100 Flower Palace would have most likely ended up with only 10% of the stratified Abyssal Realms entry slots. However, rather than feeling joyful about being praised, Cleansed Rue wore a complicated look on her face as she looked at Shifeng. The first time Cleansed Rue met Shifeng was in front of the Primordial Demon Court. At the time, Shifeng had caused her and 100 Flower Palace to suffer a huge loss. Yet, now, Shifeng had helped 100 Flower Palace secure 90% of the stratified Abyssal Realms entry slots. She even felt an indescribable sense of reliability when she looked at Shifeng's back right now. Meanwhile, some distance away from Shifeng's party, the Tower Alliance's party of 6 wore indescribably ugly looks on their faces. Originally, they had entered the Sealing Labyrinth thinking that they would be securing 90% of the stratified Abyssal Realms entry slots. They had never thought that 100 Flower Palace would be the one to monopolize 90% of the slots instead. Although they had thought of forcing their way into the raid halfway through to rake in some contributions, they eventually decided against doing so. This was because there was no benefit in doing so. It wouldn't change the outcome in any way. 100 Flower Palace could simply stop attacking the boss and switch to annihilating them instead. After all, the agreement the Tower Alliance signed with 100 Flower Palace did not state that they could not attack each other. They merely agreed to open the Sealing Labyrinth together and split the entry slots for the stratified Abyssal Realm. While the 2 guilds members were busy celebrating and sobbing, Shifeng, who stood before the Dark Titan's corpse, wore a dumbfounded look on his face. I really cannot understand what 100 Flower Palace is thinking. The entry slots might be important, but the loot of this boss probably isn't much worse than those slots, Gentle Snow exclaimed, shock coloring her face as she looked at the items scattered across the ground. She used to be the guild leader of Ouroboros, a first-rate guild, several years ago, so she had seen the loot of mythic bosses on numerous occasions. She had even seen the loot of many superior mythic bosses. However, all of them paled compared to the Dark Titan's loot. This was because the density of the mana the dropped items carried was on an entirely different level. In the past, the strongest item Gentle Snow had seen might have radiated dense mana, but the mana the item radiated remained invisible to the naked eye. However, every one of the items the Dark Titan dropped was currently radiating mist-like mana. How powerful must these items be for them to radiate such frightening mana? This loot has indeed exceeded my expectations, Shifeng similarly exclaimed. If they were to see what the Dark Titan dropped, they would have also regretted agreeing to our deal. For a mythic monster, the Dark Titan did not drop many items. It had dropped only 32 items in total. Moreover, 30 of them were materials. However, these were all incredibly special materials. Abyssal Heart Fragments. If what they got was the complete Abyssal Heart, they would have had an inferior divine artifact ranked material on their hands. Even so, as the fragments of an inferior divine artifact ranked material, the Abyssal Heart Fragments were still rated as legendary materials. When added into the production of weapons and equipment, an Abyssal Heart Fragment had a 50% chance of granting the item a mana amplification effect. In addition, it also had a 20% chance to upgrade a dark gold item to an epic item and a 1% chance to upgrade an epic item to a fragmented legendary item. Typically, one could exchange for a fragmented legendary item with just 10 abyssal heart fragments. This meant that the Dark Titan had dropped 3 fragmented legendary items worth of abyssal heart fragments. It should be known that a first-rate guild would, at most, have several dozen fragmented legendary items. So, 3 fragmented legendary items were still a considerable fortune for a first-rate guild. Not to mention, in addition to the 30 abyssal heart fragments, the Dark Titan had also dropped 1 fragmented legendary item and 1 primal lineage crystal. Abyssal Eye, Ring, fragmented legendary rank, equipment requirement, strength 1500, agility 1200. All attributes, increases according to the user's level, when equipped, increases all attributes by 40%, reduces all hostile dark type effects by 50%, ignore levels plus 10 additional skill 1, Dark Star. Continuously cause dark damage to a radius of 500 yards for 10 seconds. Cooldown, 30 seconds. Additional skill 2, Abyssal Power. Grants the wearer the power of the abyss, increasing defense by 100%, strength by 150%, agility by 60%, physique by 50%, and endurance by 100% for 3 minutes. Cooldown, 3 hours. Possession of the Abyssal Lord. Destroyed by the Eternal Spear, the Abyssal Eye's core has been split into 4 fragments. The Abyssal Eye will restore itself when the 3 other core fragments are collected. Current restoration progress, 03. Rings were much rarer than weapons and equipment in God's domain. Typically, even the various superpowers Tier 5 experts would only be using epic rings, while most Tier 4 experts would still be stuck using dark gold rings. Moreover, the level of these rings would be far beneath the players using them. Due to their rarity, rings would typically be valued 1 rank higher than their actual rank. For example, a dark gold ring would be valued similarly as an epic equipment. Meanwhile, the rarity of fragmented legendary rings was close to rivaling the rarity of legendary equipment. Not to mention, the Abyssal Eye was originally a godly relic. So long as he could find the 3 remaining core fragments, he could return the ring to its former glory. Hence, its value was many times higher than the average fragmented legendary ring. However, compared to the Abyssal Eye, Shifeng cared more about the dark crystal in his hand. This dark crystal was none other than the primal lineage crystal. It was also an item that Shifeng had never thought he would obtain, and its value was much higher than even the Abyssal Eye. TL notes, I've decided to capitalize the physique stat from now on. I didn't capitalize it initially since I wasn't sure if it was an actual in-game parameter. When I realized that it was an in-game parameter afterward, I continued keeping it at lower case for consistency. But looking at it now, it feels strange leaving physique uncapitalized. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,